That's right back, Charlie.
Because you always use that active when defending. I think it's like.
People deluded, I'm back again.
Come on, Ian. Man. Come on, Ian. And with an introduction like that, what more is there to be said other than people deluded? I'm back again. I'm joined by Babs. What are you saying, my guy? Happy New Year and all of those things, man.
Yes, man. 2024. Appreciate the invite, man. And let's have a great year, hopefully.
Yeah, man. And hopefully it's a great year for Arsenal Football Club. Not to take the smile off your face, but we have to address the elephant in the room. You know, again, it was probably naive if some Arsenal fans didn't think we would hit a blip. We've seen it with City, we've seen it with Chelsea, we've seen it with United, to a degree Spurs. And, you know, from August till now, we've just been chugging along despite injuries and concerns about depth and scoring goals and all of those sort of things. The month of December started brilliantly, to a degree, with 2 wins, I believe. Since then, 1 win in 5. It looks a bit ugly. Fans are kind of, you know, talking about the league's gone, etc., etc. What's your feelings in relation to Arsenal in December, man? How you feeling?
Tranquilo, I'm feeling calm. Listen, do you know what it is? I've obviously supported Arsenal for long enough now to understand how our fans can work, especially the last 2, 3, 4 years on social media. So I'm used to it, and I've seen hell. I've seen us the 16th in December, so I've seen a lot worse than what we are right now. And so I like to always provide context. And I think I was actually on a live stream yesterday with Dan Potts and people like that.
I think it was you, Northside.
Yeah, and it was Northside. And I feel like what I was trying to do, and sometimes I think people forget this, I'm not ultra positive. I'm not this optimistic superhero, Superman kind of no, I just try to provide context because I feel like that's how I see life. I don't want to just see it as everything's bad, right, let's boo it. No, what's the solution? What's the actual problem? And so I think in terms of Arsenal's recent performances, you have to almost separate the 2 defeats. West Ham and Fulham were different games. West Ham, we were the better team, and we deserved to win that game. We opened up 5, 6 times, had more chances. West Ham had a fluky little goal where Zinchenko clears it, nearly goes off, stays on. It wasn't really a deserved West Ham win. They were good, but we were the better team. Fulham was different. We were lacking the basics, the fundamentals, the physical intensity, which is not something that I'm used to seeing. So the fact that we're in December, and I could say Fulham's the only game this year that I've sat here and gone, yeah, we were outplayed and out-physiqued. That was the only game I can think we deserved to really lose. Because Villa, I think we deserved to win that, personally. West Ham, I think we deserved to win that. Even the games we've drawn against Fulham before, I think we deserved to win that as well. So it's a good thing, if anything. But I understand how fans see it. They see it through Man City only. And because everyone expects Man City to go 16 games winning in a row. And so they feel you have to be perfect. I get it. I get why they're concerned. But the fact that we're saying this after all of our injuries, like the fact that we have had Partey, 3 games all season? 4 games all season? Last year, if that happened to us, we wouldn't be fighting for a title right now. We would not be fighting for a title.
Good thing we got Declan Rice, isn't it?
There you go. But I think fans didn't have this idea. But because we're missing Partey and we're missing Timber, we're missing many first teamers, by the way. 2, 3, 4 first teamers. That we should still be perfect. Well, that's what happens when you have injuries. You're not going to be perfect anymore. You're going to have to find a way to survive. And Arsenal have done that pretty well this season. And I think a win against Fulham, and we're not having crisis conversations. We're actually top of the league for a bit and second right now.
I mean, I don't check the league table, so I don't know where you're at in terms of being top of the table and things like that. I take every game as it comes. Being devil's advocate, yeah, you said we didn't deserve to lose to West Ham. Now, as I said, I'm going to play devil's advocate. I believe you're right. Like, I think, you know, we controlled the fine margins. I think the only times this season I've been really disappointed is, as you said, Fulham, and I would say West Ham in the League Cup. I don't feel we was competitive. I don't feel we won our 1v1s. I don't think we were efficient in both boxes and all of those things. And the manager said it. I agree with you with the Aston Villa West Ham game, and I'd also extend that to Newcastle in that we didn't necessarily deserve to lose. But playing devil's advocate, you know, this is the Premier League. There's probably been times where you could count Brentford or Luton unlucky not to get anything from those games or games in general. Even when we beat City, you know, you mentioned we didn't deserve to lose. I personally feel that Arsenal's at that stage now where, again, I agree with you. We need to look at the fine margins because that's what's going to get you a Premier League title. I don't feel it's good enough necessarily to be good or better than the team you need to score. So if we look at the West Ham game, like, would it be possible to agree that they were a lot more street smart than us? They were compact. They took their opportunities that we didn't, regardless of the amount of touches in the box. Do you feel we're at that stage now where we need to focus on these fine margins if we're going to win the Premier League title? And do you feel the margins are literally as black and white as winning or losing? Because as you kind of imagined, everybody's expecting City to come back. I know a lot of people said City was finished. Facts is everybody's in and around everyone. And I feel we was due a normalization of results. You know, since August till now, we've been ticking along and not even getting away with things, but getting away with things. There was always going to be a time where there was going to be a normalization of performances where we were going to pick up some losses. You know, the Fulham game, I agree, is very different defeat to West Ham, but fundamentally, when you look back in May, I don't think we're going to go over and say that was a better loss, that was a better loss. So do you think we're at that point now, if we're going to be title contenders, where we probably have to, again, not for the over positive or negative people, for the balanced Arsenal fans, the boys have to focus on those fine margins, because that's what's going to deliver us a trophy, surely.
100%. But fine margins are based on what? Sometimes luck. That's what it is, right? That's what I'm saying. So fine margins you can't prepare for fine margins when it goes against you in terms of luck. You know, a shot that goes wide, you touch the ball like a centimetre left, it might go in. Like, that's what fine margins are, really and truly. But I agree. You know, fans are looking at those fine things and they're having that crisis because they feel like they have to. Because if they don't, then, you know, then the standards are dropping. But I still want Arsenal to win a title this year. So my standard hasn't dropped because of 2 defeats. I still believe it could happen as well. But in terms of how you get those fine margins to go in your favour, you have difference makers. And I'll give you the best team in the league at that. It's not even Man City. I'd say it's Liverpool. They've got players like Salah and Alisson that in those games where maybe they're not performing to their best, those 2 players, are, because they're so world class, they'll find a way to make something happen. We don't have those players just yet. Players that are on the cusp of that, Odegaard, Saka, etc., but they're not quite there yet. That's why Mikel Arteta is targeting Osimhen. So he sees that. He sees those fine margins and goes, okay, cool, how can I add that to my favour? I'd actually even argue the likes of Havertz. If you're talking about what his ideal is for Havertz, is to him also to be a fine margin person to get in your favour, because you can arrive into the box, score a little scrappy goal, and that can win you a game. So we're working towards that. We're getting better at it. But I actually look at the season as progress to last year, even though people think, you know, we got worse in terms of points. Last year, we overperformed our expected numbers by quite a bit. I'm not saying we got lucky there, but that was fine margins going in our favour. Sometimes, as we can see this year, it evens out. And it's not going in your favour as much. That Martinelli chance where I think we kind of open follow up on the right-hand side, he cuts back and Martinelli kind of puts it wide. Last year, that goes in, right? And we're having different conversations. So in terms of our underlying numbers, they're still pretty good. And that's a good sign. And the reason why it's a good sign is because there's always one team that's top of that underlying metric, and it's Man City. And there's a reason why they win titles year after year, is because they always do the right things, and it eventually evens out in their favour. Even the year that Liverpool won a title, Man City was still the best team in the league in terms of expected numbers. So that's why they win 5 out of 6 league titles. So we're on the right course. I just feel like we've hit a little bit of a bump. But a lot of our fans' concerns, then, you know, it happens because when you lose games, you think, oh yeah, we are the worst. You overgeneralize straight away. But I look at it as our attack. You look at the last 2-3 months. At the start of the year, in the first 2 months, I would say we were really poor. We weren't making chances.
I know where you're going with this, and I agree.
And now we're making chances. So the conversation has changed now. It's gone from, I'd rather be having the problem of not scoring the chances than not making the chance in the first place. So the fact that our numbers of chance creation has gone higher shows that Mikel is working in the right manner. But that doesn't mean he's perfect. That doesn't mean that we are the final form to win a title. I think now you have to evolve again. And if your attack isn't clicking in a certain manner that you want it to, and the Fulham game's a prime example because we couldn't penetrate them in the final 20 minutes. That doesn't happen to the team that wants to win a title. You need to find a way, right? And so when you've got the quality of Martinelli, Saka and co, you need to find a way to maybe complement them better. So I heard a lot of fans talk about the fact that we can have maybe Odegaard switch over and maybe throw a Smith Rowe on the right-hand side or Havertz to complement Saka better. Mikel has to try now. But I have to also be careful with how much fans want Mikel to try, because if we change the entire team for our next league game and we lose again, we'll be the first one saying, why did Mikel experiment?
And I agree with you. Sorry to butt in, but I agree with you. I feel, you know, Mikel Arteta, the better we get, he has to be judged to higher standards. If I praise you with all of this energy and what you're doing, then naturally I have to. I'm never going to ask more of Mikel Arteta or the players if I don't believe they can in it. So I do believe you've got to go down that route. But at the same time, I agree with you in that, you know, I do think football fans, they want all the youngsters to play, all the experienced players to play. They want the same 11, but they also want everyone to get an opportunity. And if life was fair, we'd all have less. In reality, that's not really feasible. Obviously, Zinchenko against Fulham was injured, so that's probably why he didn't start, but Kirill came in. I didn't quite agree with Gabriel Jesus being dropped, but I understood it on the basis of we can have question marks over Eddie Nketiah, but our problems are literally putting the ball in the back of the net. Eddie Nketiah is a bit more interested than Gabriel Jesus in standing in the box. You mentioned You mentioned something, and I want to play devil's advocate again. I feel when I look at Arsenal, since Mikel Arteta walked in the door, whether he's able to deliver us a Premier League trophy or not, I think if he left tomorrow, he could be proud. We've got players that are improving, players that like you said, are on the cusp of doing things. You know, fans are happy. In the very fact of in the last few years, when was we talking about Premier League titles? We'll be here all day talking about the great decisions Mikel Arteta has made. But that's me looking at our trajectory. If I remove that hat and assume that last season, including now, we've arrived, we're talking about Premier League titles. Based on what you said about, you know, the Mo Salah example about how they do it week in, week out. Now, obviously, we know Salah is significantly more experienced than the Bakayos and Martinelli, and we're kind of doing this kind of youngster thing. But surely it's got to be a pipe dream then, because you look at City and Liverpool, they've got certified goal scorers. We have goal scorers spread out throughout the team, but we don't have that target man, whether it's a winger that's going to get them goals or a striker. And we have young volatile players. We're probably over reliant on Saka and Martinelli. I wouldn't quite say they look burnt out, but they do, for want of other phrases, look burnt out. Surely then it's a pipe dream, because essentially if Liverpool and City got guns, we're going with a blunt knife to a fight.
I hear that, and you know, that is a very good conversation to have, because Liverpool have an advantage and so does City, and that's experience as well. The players we're talking about here have won titles. They have got over the line before. And so we have to do a feat this year that, you know, these players haven't done before, and it's difficult. And that's why you're going to get bumps in the road like we had in the last few. It's not going to be clean sailing 99 points every single game win. It's not going to happen like that, because then, you know, that's not a journey, is it? You know, you have highs and lows.
It's not realistic in a Premier League season. We'd all love to never lose, but it can't happen.
We're going to need a bit of luck to go in our favour. Key players to stay fit. And if that happens, you know, we win a title potentially. But I think Mikel's banking on the fact that he wants to control every aspect of the game, and that fans are now getting annoyed at that. They're going, "Oh, you've stifled our attack." But I think he wants to find a balance, because we're getting closer to that balance. And you look at the West Ham game as an example of it, is we were making a lot of chances, yet controlling the game also. In Mikel's eyes, he goes, "Yeah, I'm controlling the game. I'm limiting their chances. I'm making my own chances." That's him working. And 99% of games, that will win for you. So he's trying to find a sustainable manner. And I think last year his issue was it wasn't sustainable. That's why we fell off towards the end of the title, because it wasn't sustainable. So yes, it was great to watch in October and August, but when it came to April, May, it wasn't working anymore. So he wants to find a system that he can replicate constantly. And, you know, we're actually, right now, fans look at it this way, we're playing with plan B. Because I don't think Kai Havertz was meant to start for Arsenal straight away this season. And I think our actual plan A is Rice, Partey and Odegaard. And how often have we actually seen our best midfield this season? Last year we saw it a lot more often.
Couldn't tell because you people talk about probably Man City.
People talk about Partey being injured and that being expected, but not this much. Not this much, because last year he played 28 games. That was, you know, and even that was after injuries. The year before was 23 games, so he still plays more than he's played this year. This has just been a even worse year for injuries. But that's why Mikel Arteta signed Declan Rice, to keep us within range. And then you're hoping that when Timber returns and Partey returns, it can stay fit. And some players like Martinelli, Saka will pick up form again, by the way. Then you're banking on those players to, you know, get those fine margins to go in your favour. Because while Saka isn't Salah yet, you can become a Salah if you help Arsenal win a title.
I think you're bang on the money, though. And I think it's a bit harsh in that, you know, as much as I love the romance around our football club, the youngsters, the stars of tomorrow, the young manager, young director in terms of Edu, we're going against the grain, we're fighting to do the impossible like last season. I think we have to count our blessings, where I'm definitely not over the moon excited. I'm definitely not on the floor. Reality is we've got 40 odd points. We're in and around everyone. We will drop points against so will everyone else. That's why I mentioned the fine margins, because I do think we lack street smartness, specifically the players. You know, that's where I kind of look at the West Ham game, and to a degree with the Fulham game, I'm angry because you're not competitive. That's the minimum that has to be done. Cool, it was a bad day, it happens. Where I look at the Newcastles, the West Hams, nobody gives you 3 points. I think our players need to be a bit street smart. When you smell blood, go for it. Even games where we've scored a whole lot of goals, we haven't necessarily done that. And I think at times, more or less like around the Liverpool kind of game, even in the Fulham game, I think we've started well, and it's like we kind of drop off. We kind of do that thing we did against Liverpool last season, or at West Ham away last season, where we start well, we get the goals, and then it's kind of like chill out. That's where I believe the manager can tell you stuff. He can give you water, but you have to want to drink it. Where I look at Mikel Arteta now, and I want to know your opinions on squad depth. Obviously, I have you know, an appreciation for injuries. Injuries can strike at any time. I'm sure they tried to bring in certain players in August that ain't at the club. But at the end of the day, you know, if my players try to win and they don't win, there's question marks. And I think the same has to be extended to those off the field. I do feel to a degree that the squad depth is of Mikel Arteta's own doing, whether it's the players that have had to come in and they might not be good enough, or the injuries, or players that are good but not quite good enough to push us over the line. So I do think to a degree, Mikel Arteta, he's standing in the rain and he's getting wet. Like in the same way I praise you for this squad that you assembled, if there's little fragments in it that there's issues, then I have to ask you questions. Like I'm a big fan of Zinchenko, but I know when we need someone strong 1v1 defensively, he's not that guy. I like Kai Havertz finding his feet now, but I think on top of Martinelli not doing the business of his own back, I feel because of the, Havertz not really being a direct replacement for Xhaka, Martinelli is suffering. I do think Martin Odegaard, Bukayo Saka and Benjamin White is becoming a bit scripted, and I do feel a couple of our players look knackered because we haven't got any. And I'm not being harsh to Mikel Arteta, and I'm not saying you need to play Reece Nelson necessarily, but when I look at it with Saka, Smith Rowe, Trossard, Martinelli, everybody's not Jesus. No one's really thriving in the front four positions. So Arteta has to take responsibility indirectly if everybody's doing that, as well as him himself. But then I look at someone like Nelson. Why is he in the squad? Because I don't feel Arteta trusts him as much. And if that is the case, I am now leaning to the sense of get someone that you do trust, that you will bring off the bench and things. So ultimately, if I praise Mikel Arteta for how he's assembled his squad, when it goes poorly, I surely have to look at him for the foundations. Where are you at with squad depth? Can we even cry about that? Because injuries aren't necessarily just to us. And I'm sure even though we've been dealing with it from August, some fans of some other clubs would probably say, what are you crying about? You're muted. I think you're muted, bro.
I'm not actually complaining about squad depth like that, I'll be honest. I know there's obviously the conversation of we can improve, but we can always improve. It's never going to be perfect because you're always going to have injuries. And you're never going to have De Bruyne behind De Bruyne, Saka behind Saka. You're not going to have that. You're always going to have a little drop off. So I think fans that complain about squad depth need to actually realise how far we've come from last year. Because Potter is a starter, he's injured right now. Timber would have been a starter, he's injured right now. I'd say there's 2-3 starters that Arsenal are missing right now. Take that out of our team last year, we're not even in a conversation for a title. So the fact that this year we can replace our starters like Timber and like Partey with Rice and Zinchenko, whoever it is, shows how far our squad has come. The fact that we can bring Trossard off the bench now, whereas last year for the first half he wasn't there. You would have had Smith Rowe who would have been injured. Vieira is injured right now, but if he's on the bench, he can come off the bench as well. Our squad is improving, but we're not at the final stage, and that might happen next year, the year after that. But Mikel knows that. So yes, can we add an extra 5%? Probably, but I don't think that 95% can be ignored. Because we have improved most of our squad. There's a lot of players in the right areas.
You're right. And that's why you need balance when having conversations like this. I'm sure Arsenal fans, I think we're the most optimistic when things go right. We're the most negative when things go wrong. I think you've got fans that are positive to the point where it's a bit toxic. And then you've obviously got negativity, misery, loves company. That's why I think you need to look at it with balance. If I ask you on our front three players, really, let's start with Martinelli. What's going on there? Are you concerned? I think he'll get back in form, but right now it does look concerning. Like, what do you think's happened with him? And also indirectly, Saka.
I think in terms of Martinelli, he goes through phases. We saw it last year as well. And Mikel has to almost find a way to get the best out of him again. And last year, the thing was that he was struggling to combine with players, and he'd be Saka on the right with the striker combining, but on the left-hand side, it wasn't working as much. And of course, when you don't have the quality of Martin Odegaard next to you, and Havertz isn't Odegaard in terms of combination either, you're going to struggle a bit more. So you've taken away Xhaka, who was an integral part of the team, and he's obviously gone. And now you're replacing with a different dynamic. So now, once again, Martinelli has to adapt. And then when you, on top of that, again, for Fulham, for example, you don't have Zinchenko either, that passing player to get the ball forwards. Again, that's another struggle. So now you got Kivior and Havertz. So I think it's a mixture of him not being, I'd say, maximised in terms of profile, but also just confidence. The guy is still 22. 22, or 23 or 22, and that you're going to have that still.
You're going to have them highs and lows as you try and bring consistency into your game.
People always compare Saka and, Martinelli to Mane and Salah, but Mane and Salah only really made it when they were 26, 25. They didn't. Where were they at 22? They weren't playing for Liverpool, were they? So I think it's a matter of just he's going for a little phase. And I think now Mikel needs to maybe take him out of the firing line. I think he's lacking ideas. That's what I see. When I see Martinelli play now, I think he's kind of burnt out.
Almost
he's played so many games.
As well, man.
Yeah, and I think he's running through that almost. Last year was a lot more instinctive. And now he's got that second album syndrome where he's thinking all the time of, what was I doing last year? That's what Arsenal fans do this year. It's like, what were we doing last year? Did we beat them last year? We're caught up in last year. We're caught up in the past too much, but the future's yet to come. Like, it's not here yet. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And I think that's what Martin needs to just relax a little bit more. But I'm sure he'll find goals. And that's how forwards work, is once you get 1, 2, 3 goals, you get confidence and it flows in together. But he's 22. Let's have some context behind him.
What about Bukayo?
I'm not concerned with Bukayo. I heard a lot of conversations about he's not being at his best this year, but I don't think our attack has been firing at its highest this year. Last year, I think Saka missed two big chances all season. This year's already missed 6. So, it happens. You're not going to have perfection every single year, and there will be a little slow part, but he's still got, 20 goals and assists in 26 games a season. He's still being efficient.
Our top goal scorer.
Yeah, he's still being very efficient. So I think we're seeing Saka kind of, he's doing what Salah does at times, where even if Salah is not performing, he'll still find a way to contribute to the game and provide a difference. So he's becoming more of that. And I think that the more our attack improves and we find a more set attack, so whoever the striker is going to be, Jesus or Nketiah, whoever starts more often. And then you've got Odegaard playing in the role that he needs to play. Maybe it's a switch to Havertz on that side. Saka will get better and better as well. But Saka's always a player that warms into the season. He always does that. And I think when it comes to the later parts or the mid parts, he starts to really fire away.
Hopefully it's this Sunday, really and truly. Hopefully he gets his boots on again.
Exactly. If I'm sitting here right now and saying Bukayo Saka's out of form, and he got 20 goals and assists, meaning he's provided 20 moments of a game to change for Arsenal. That
tells you the high standards of the lad.
It has very high standards, but I think again, fans compare it to last year, because last year he would have been this. So I get it. I get why fans are a bit concerned, but I ain't concerned. I'm just waiting to see how things develop, because I think he'll develop again, like Martinelli will, because he's very young.
Where are you at with Odegaard and Jesus?
I think with Odegaard, I can see Mikel's learning more about him. He's trying him in more suitable ways. As an example, when Odegaard early in the season, you were like, he's not really playing at his best. And then Mikel changed it to maximise his profile.
Look at that Brighton game, actually, one of the only bright sparks in December. He put on a clinic and he was all right, I feel, against Liverpool as well, personally.
Even against West Ham, opening up a few times.
He was one of the better players, but we lost, so it doesn't really matter.
And I think we're seeing him become more of himself, and that's because Mikel's put him in a system now, or put him in a part of a system that works better for him. And so the fact that he's almost solved that problem that we had earlier in the year gives me more confidence in Martinelli and co, because I can see him seeing what the problem is and find a way to fix it. And I still feel like you could probably maximise Odegaard even better. Maybe try him on the left for a game to see how it works out, to see if his passing profile helps Martinelli out better. To see if
Saka undoubtedly would, man. There's no seeing it. We're 100%, but then
I feel like Saka our issue is we've got 2 runners on the left hand side and 2 touch defeat players on the right? Saka and Odegaard both want the ball. They both want it to feet, whereas Martinelli and Havertz are both runners. So I think that imbalance, if Mikel does try it and it works out, and I'm not saying it's guaranteed to work, by the way, because I ain't a manager, but I just think it's worth a go. And if we can see that, and we talk about how to maximise Martinelli, and I think Mikel always says the best player that combines with him the most is Fabio Vieira, who's a passing profile.
Well, yeah, they got a bromance off the field as well, yeah.
Yeah, and he's very similar to Martin Odegaard. So I'm thinking, I think Mikel will try it. I think it's a matter of time he will try it. And if it works and it sticks, then I think he'll keep with it as well.
Where are you at with Gabriel Jesus?
I think with Gabriel Jesus, it's the same
accept him for what he is, in that he's never going to be a consistent bagsman.
He isn't a consistent bagsman, but what is consistent? Because he'll still bag you 15 a season. That is consistent, right? So is he a 20 goal a season striker? Probably not. But that's a world-class goal scorer. So yeah, is he ever going to be a world-class goal scorer? No. But he'll be consistent. He'll still provide you moments over the season. And if he starts every game this year, he'll end up with around 10, 15 goals. He will always do that.
Well,
so he's consistent.
15. He's good enough to get 15.
He's all around that mark anyways. So even last, I think he would have been that if he hadn't been injured for 3 months.
Yeah, he got 11 and then got the big injury.
So he always finds a way to be in that conversation. So we have to accept what his profile is, and also realize that, just like almost Xhaka at times, took it for granted. Now he's gone. You go, we missed him now. If we replace Jesus with a striker, let's just say, a goal scoring striker, and then Martinelli Saka start to struggle even more, then fans will be like, but Jesus used to do this and do that. You have to appreciate what he offers as his strength and stop focusing so much on his weaknesses.
And I think that's the thing with Gabriel Jesus, when accept him for what he is. Like, I don't think you should be quote unquote our first choice striker. I think we need a striker with decent, it's never going to be Gabriel Jesus, but decent general play, but who's more interested in scoring goals. That being said, Jesus is a vital member of the squad, and he might only get 5 to 15 goals, but they might be decisive goals. And I think I'm at that stage where I like Zinchenko, for example, but there's certain games that's not for you. So let's play you in the games that are for you. Gabriel Jesus, you're not a goal scorer. Let's mitigate against that. As obviously, I'd love to wake up and Zinchenko's great defensively. Jesus, the only mediocre thing about him is his goal return, and then we're kind of laughing. But that is what I mean about utilizing your squad, and it's not really a criticism of Mikel Arteta, but it's like we take players who are decent squad players and we make them regulars, and then it's kind of like us fans, we're kind of surprised as to why they haven't been able to quote unquote collectively deliver. I think you made an interesting point about our left hand side. I think our right hand side has gone a bit predictable. people. And I almost feel sorry for Saka and Odegaard, because if them two not at it, 9 times out of 10, forget our scoring in it. It's just not going to happen. I think when you consider what I just said about the right and the left, I personally feel that even in the Fulham game, I think Havertz is playing okay. I think Odegaard was all right in the context of us being poor. And I think Declan Rice is great. I'd say the second half is the first time this season against Fulham where probably Declan Rice, Saliba, Gabriel all dropped off a level because nobody was at it. But 9 times out of 10, he's a bracket above people. But for me, it does feel like there's a bit of a missing link. I don't know what it is. I can't really put my finger on it. I don't necessarily think it's Partey, even though I'd like him in the team. It feels like there's something missing. So when we don't look necessarily that good off the left, that good off the right, and there's teething issues centrally, I think Arteta's got to probably find a way against that. And I like the fact that, you know, we've got multiple goal scorers, but with Martinelli and Odegaard not finding their goal scoring boots at the moment, that's like 20 odd goals out of our team. That could have been some defeats turned into draws, or some draws turned into victories, you know. And I do think you alluded to it. I think we sometimes forget how young Saka and Martinelli are. To a degree, it's irrelevant if this is what we're doing, but we can't expect them to do it week in, week out. And obviously, Mikel Arteta knows that. That's probably where other players have to come into the fold. So I think you're quite interesting comments with that. Where are you at with David Raya? Because I do feel one positive well, excluding the Luton game, but the latter part of December, I think David Raya's kind of found his feet. You know, fans aren't really waffling about him and doing the whole Ramsdale thing. I guess the jury is still out, not necessarily wild, but I think he's doing okay now. Where are you at with David Raya?
Yeah, I think he's definitely improving, but that's what happens when you can play his time. You know,
yeah,
he's not going to be a 10 out of 10 from the get-go straight away, especially when he signed. He wasn't signed as an Alisson. He was signed as, you know, a potential player that might work. You know, I think fans wanted Alisson, but we didn't pay Alisson money. You pay Alisson money, you get Alisson. But who is that Alisson in the market right now? Is there a goalkeeper you look at and go, yeah, if we sign him and he's available for sure, he'll transform us like that. So sometimes you have to appreciate that you might get a 7 or 8 out of 10 player, and that's what Raya is. He isn't going to be that 10 out of 10 Alisson, but he will be the 8 or 7 out of 10. And I think that the issue with Ramsdale was he'd have those very high games where he could be like Alisson at times and make some very good saves. But
10 out of 10 one week, and 2 out of 10 the next, and exactly. 10, and then And
you want consistency in your back four, and especially from your goalkeeper. And if you don't have that from your goalkeeper, you're going to struggle. So Mikel wanted a more consistent goalkeeper. I actually think Ramsdale's got a higher ceiling, but Raya's got a higher floor. And Mikel wants that floor. He wants that consistent goalkeeper. That, you know, he can do the fundamentals and basics better at times. So I think I'm fine with him. I don't have a problem with him, and I think my only real concern is going forwards. And if we can fix that, then, you know, we're in business.
What have you made of our defensive performances? I'm not necessarily just referring to the defenders in the same way that, you know, I always say our first attacker is David Raya. That's why we play out from the back. Our first defender is Gabriel Jesus. Personally, I feel we need to get back to the basics defensively. I think we had high standards defensively, and I don't know what's going on, especially from set pieces. You look at Luton, you look at Fulham. Even before the goals came against Fulham, I think the pressing wasn't quite as intense. We're not following runners and things like that. It feels like, for me, we have dropped off a level defensively, even though we've got that Bermuda triangle of the 2 centre-halves and Declan Rice. What have you made of us defensively? Because ultimately, defence wins you titles.
I think what's happened is Mikel's, you know, looked at the attack and gone, it's not quite working out, so let me fix the balance. And when you try to fix the balance, you run the risk of potentially not ruining the defence, but opening up a bit more often. That's what's happened is we've tried to go a bit more attacking and left more space in behind. And that was always going to happen. That's what happened last year as well.
Was it the first goal they scored where Saka, obviously Benjamin White's overlapped, Saka's had his pocket picked, and then, they pull in the back of the net.
Yeah, and I also feel like a lot of our defenders, there's a few defenders that are clearly not playing fully fit. I look at Ben White's performance and I'm like, that's not Ben White. That's not a player we saw last season.
I don't think he's been fit for a while.
You know, and you can tell that. And you can tell how he's playing as well, the way he's not being fit. So I think it's a lack of maybe fitness at times, but also Mikel trying to do what fans want, which is attack better. But you can't just have a 10 out of 10 defense and a 10 out of 10 attack. If we had that, we win a title guaranteed.
Yeah,
so you have
probably
to
win
always,
the treble, really.
Yeah, you know, it's like when you pull the blanket, you're going to have your feet maybe, you know, exposed for a sec. That's what happened. You can't just have both sides covered straight away. Mikel's trying to find that balance. And I think, you know, I wouldn't say our defense has been poor. We've conceded goals, but how many chances have we conceded? The Fulham game we did, but look at the second goal we conceded. Like, it wasn't really like a clear-cut Fulham wonder goal. It was.
That's why I'm vexed at it, because you know, for me, few weeks ago,
it was unfortunate.
Yeah. I feel like a few months ago that doesn't happen. It was unfortunate.
It doesn't happen,
and that's my issue. That's why I think everybody in this team needs to forgive themselves for anything that's gone negative this season. Pat themselves on the back for anything that's gone good. You know, thank their blessings that one good thing is from August up until December, we was winning games, last minute winners, however he's doing it. To kind of echo your point about the floor, we've fallen on a certain floor, and then we can move forward from that. The only real criticism beyond the obvious I have for Arsenal is what everyone wants. We'd love to win every game. I would have loved to have been that team that can kind of pull away. City, Liverpool, everybody's kind of clustered together, and it's going to fluctuate. I always say in football, it's an age-old saying, a week's a long time in football. We've had 19 weeks. You go all the way back to August. In my opinion, if I look back, Fabio Vieira and Eddie Nketiah are probably two of our best players in the team at the moment. And there's probably been different protagonists. Havertz has come to the floor and things like that. I do want to ask you, though, do you feel the chance of winning a Premier League title this season's gone then? Because that is I know it's reactionary, but that is something people are saying.
Yeah, we're in a top 4 race now, apparently. No,
that'll take the pressure off us. Let's go with that, so we can run agendas elsewhere.
The only time I think it's over is if the team that was top right now was Man City. And it's not. And I think Liverpool, as great as they are with the players they have with Salah and Alisson, I think their system is more flawed than Man City's is. And I'm banking on the fact they concede some sloppy goals. You saw it against Newcastle, a game that were flying and they were ripping them apart. And they still conceded 2 goals, by the way. And they could have gone other way as well. So I think because their defence, I wouldn't say it's as good as ours. They had the attack, we have the defence. We'll see what evens out over the course of the season. And if we can find a way to score more goals and still keep that balance right, then I think we can catch them. But if Man City were 5 points clear right now, then I would be very concerned. So even the Liverpool top, my biggest concern is Man City, because they are a team that I could see go 15.
I think everyone's scared of City, whether you're an Arsenal, because Liverpool, or any other team.
They've got a system, but they've also got difference makers. They've got the best of both worlds,
and they've been there, done it, wore the t-shirts,
and they've got the Haaland, right? But so yeah, of course, I don't think it's over. And I think if I was to admit that it's over in January, I never believed in the first place.
So is it a good season if we don't win the Prem?
I would be disappointed. I'll be disappointed because that was my goal going into it. So if I had a goal of winning a title and I don't win a title, I'm going to be disappointed. I'm not going to sit here and celebrate finishing second, but context is important. If you finish second and you're a point off it, I'm not going to celebrate that either, but I'll be like, okay, you were there. If we finish third or fourth and we're 15 points off, I'm very concerned then. I'm asking questions of Mikel Arteta. I'm going, listen, injuries happen, but why do you fall off that much? Could you have fixed something else? Could you got something out better? But yeah, I still want to win a title. And if we're not in that conversation for a title and we are out of the title race, then I'm going to be very annoyed.
I mean, one question that I'm sure you've heard, or when you've watched on YouTube, other YouTubers and things, because of where we're at, and generally, I think Arteta has shown he's the man to turn us around. Whether he's the man that can get us a Premier League or Champions League is another thing. Many fans would ask the question, and I want to know your thoughts. Do you necessarily think Mikel Arteta should or shouldn't be sacked if he fails to obviously win the big one?
I think we're looking at that very black and white. So if we were on 90, what was it? Let's we end up on 89 points and City win a title on 90. You think he gets sacked? No, because there's a grey area in between as well. And so it will depend on what the grey area is. Are we in that conversation? Are we closing the gap? Are we closer and closer? If we are in a title race in April, how are we doing? Are we flopping like last year? Are we finding a way to stay in the conversation and actually getting those wins? And if we're getting closer and closer, that's ultimately what it is. Fans need to see the vision. And if our vision is this year getting closer or winning a title, then fans will be happy with it. But if we get further away, then it becomes a bit disillusioned. You're like, oh, hang on a minute. I thought we were closer than we were last year. So, I think, yeah, if Mikel doesn't win a title, there'll be conversations. But it depends on how.
How do you feel about Kirill? Because I like him. I like him. I want to give you time. But I just feel the way, I'm not saying to sell him in January, but the way we're going, I don't know if we're going to get out of the hood with you really and truly, because I know I shouldn't hold someone accountable for last season, but for me, he just looks a lot overawed. I know he's not a natural left back, but you've got to take your chances, and there's still some basic competencies. I think rightly so, he deserved to get hooked against Fulham. I'll never forget, him playing around with his boot at Brighton last season and probably Sporting Lisbon. It's very difficult to show your quality when, you've got Gabriel playing ahead of you, you're not getting his spot, you're not a natural left back. But I just don't think he switched on defensively enough. Like, I'm sure you remember when he signed, we were told how fast he is, and I don't doubt it, but if you're not looking over your shoulders and you're left flat-footed, you're going to be in trouble. And obviously, he got terrorized against PSV. It's that kind of, if I had any issues with Mikel Arteta, it's probably the drop-off with some of the squad players. Where are you at with Kirill?
He's now coming close into a year at Arsenal. So he's going to have his first season, let's just say. So that's why...
This is his anniversary of sorts this month.
I feel like what it is with Kirill is Mikel wants him to be an Ake, but he's not an Ake. I don't think he will be an Ake profile. He isn't that strong 1v1 defender. He's more of an actual ball-playing centre-back. I'd say less Ake, more Laporte in terms of the ball-playing ability. And I think the concern with that is the profile Mikel wanted, he hasn't got so far. So yes, it's been a year.
Yeah, where
but
you
let's
look
just
at
say,
Sandro Martinez and Skolobeck, I think you're right there.
And I think if you end the season now and you say to yourself, look, Kivior hasn't worked out, there will be sacrifices. There will have to be sacrifices.
You have to
And
get
also,
20
like,
million back, man.
you have to find a way to maximize his value, because if you keep him on the bench for longer and longer, you're going to just reduce
He's
that
got
value.
a lot of interest from Italian clubs.
So there's a reason why, because he's a good player. That's a good sign. If you have a player that's not playing and the people still want him, sign him, it's because he's a good player, right? So I think there's quality there. It's just about him showing the belief in himself. I think right now he struggled when he plays in the first team. He's playing as if like he will be taken off anyways. Like it's like a
that's what I mean.
not to
He
work
looks
out.
a bit unsure half the time. Like he might be the most confident man in the world. I don't know him from nowhere, but to how he looks on TV and at the stadiums, you look unsure. And obviously, you're probably going to be a bit unsure. You know, you're not playing. You know, you're only playing left back because of Zinchenko's absence. You know, you've got Timber there. Really, you know, you're a bench boy. So I think you're bang on the money there. It probably is, but then if I'm harsh, you've got to find your headspace, because this is Arsenal Football Club now. Like, nobody, if you don't believe in yourself, no one can believe in yourself. You're not going to be the first or the last player to not have confidence. You know, Declan Rice strikes me as a very confident individual, but playing devil's advocate, how do we know he's not the most nervous man on the planet? But it's how he portrays himself and how he G's up himself. I think you're bang on the money with Kyril's got to be half decent if Jose Mourinho at Roma wants you, Napoli are on to you, AC Milan. Obviously, interest in actually wanting you, it could be paper talk. And that's where I kind of want to go on to my next question. Like, how do you feel about January? Because obviously, we clearly need a centre mid. We'd all love a striker long term. We'd all probably love a winger. We probably need to make some defensive additions. There's rumours which were quite close to FFP, and we need to sell before we can buy. I think when you look at it, yeah, there's logic between Partey, Jorginho, Smith Rowe, Aaron Ramsdale, Nketiah, Nelson potentially all being sold to kind of reinvest. But I think we both know in January that it's not sensible, really and truly. Like, even me with Eddie, I'm not selling Eddie Nketiah unless I wake up tomorrow and we're signing Ivan Toney. Whether I rate Eddie Nketiah or not, yes, there's other options. We're literally going to be weaker. Mikel Arteta the other day just said we need 20-odd players when we get to March or April. We've seen how we're playing a dangerous game with depth already. So how do you feel about the January market? Are you confident we'll bring people in? What positions would you like Arsenal to obviously address? And how would you feel about any potential outgoings if you're for sanctioning any?
I think the one that fans want the most is a striker, and it's the one they won't get. Unless Eddie Nketiah does definitely leave, they will definitely sign a striker, and it might be a Tony. Mikel wants to wait for that to be, I think the player he wants is Osimhen is clear, right? And that won't happen in January. So it's about, it was like a Declan Rice almost. He wanted Rice and he waited for Rice. He thinks Osimhen is a Rice and he'll wait for Osimhen. Yeah. I think the player that I want the most is actually a proper Xhaka replacement. That's not to say I want to see Havertz.
I mean, I've been vocal on the centre mid. I'm kind of past
We need to have, Havertz for me was a plan B in the first place, and our plan A is playing as a number 6. I think Rice was meant to be the Xhaka replacement because he's the most similar profile that we had to him. But we ain't seen him play there as much because Potter's been injured. So I think we might actually see maybe Mikel sign a 6-8 hybrid that can either allow Rice to play higher up the pitch.
I'm all for that. Or
to actually play more of a specialist. We will basically, I think if we're signing, the first team we will sign in the window, if we are going to sign one, will be a deep line playmaker. And we get linked to Douglas Luiz, Supermendy, those players.
They would be lovely, but they're going to cost big bucks. Assuming they want to leave in Supermendy.
Of course they will. But if I think if Arsenal see the opportunity to make it happen, and there's always opportunities. Let's not forget right now that our current captain, Martin Odegaard, was January
million. Ridiculous.
Bargain. It was an opportunity. And that didn't happen. Mikel didn't want
to on loan actually as well. So we might in January. You can't turn down the loan market.
That's what I'm saying, is there's always opportunities, and I think Arsenal look for opportunities. They'll look for the main players first. They will put maybe an offer forwards. They might put a negotiation there and there, but if it don't work out, they're going to look for opportunities. And there's always opportunities. And the fact that we got Odegaard as an opportunity shows that. So we'll see who Mikel can sign, and even if it's a short-term player, just to give us the profile, to give us an option. Because right now we don't have an option. If Havertz isn't working out, it's Smith Rowe maybe. He's not the same player, is he?
Where are you at with, okay, you mentioned number 8. That's your first. What other areas? In an ideal world, like you could have two sides. Obviously, it's not realistic to assume we'd all love it, but winger, striker, centre mid, defensive options, probably a number 2 in the summer, number 2 keeper. You could only get 2. You said one with central midfield. Where would you lean towards? Another defender or another striker or a winger that could probably deputise / be competition for Saka and or Martinelli?
I think we have to be sensible here, and we know what Mikel's going to go for as defenders. He always goes defenders first because he knows that
he loves it.
That's the area. No matter how many we sign, we always get them injured, right? And who's behind Saliba right now? No one, right? So at least behind Jesus, you got Nketiah, and you can have Trossard there maybe play. Maybe even Martinelli play there. But behind Saliba, you maybe got Declan Rice. That's about it. So we have to, I think if we're going to sign a player,
and that has a knock-on effect for our squad as well and how we play football. If you move Ben White out and put Tomiyasu, it's shifting dynamics, kind of going back to what you said earlier about you can't really make wholesale changes, or at least we can't. If you got City's team, which I'm sure Pep would disagree, then yeah, you could probably be a bit more adventurous. I think you're right there.
Jan signings are always going to be versatile. You look at Trossard, and as an example, if he can play as a left winger, right winger, and striker. If we sign a midfielder, he won't just be a number 8 and that's it. He'll be able to play 6 as well. And so if we sign a defender, he won't just be a pure right back. He'll be a right back and play centre back, maybe in left back as well. And I think that's the profile we're going to go for. We keep hearing the name of Diamonde at Sporting. That's a profile that can play a right back and play a right centre back. So I think we'll go for that type of player. We call almost like a Kivio, but on the right hand side. But obviously, hopefully, a player that can actually is more ready for the first team for the get go.
If I say some names to you, what would you do with them? Eddie Nketiah, for example, been linked with Brentford, Crystal Palace, 40 million shouts. What are you doing with him in January?
Depends on the offers. If you put 40 million pounds,
bang, you got 40 million at this moment in time. Bang, 40 million. No guarantee that Ivan Toney's arriving or anyone like that. 40 million has been given to you, Babs. Are you accepting?
But if you're getting 40 million in January, how much you can get from in the summer? That's what I'd say. Because if you're offering 40 in January, a bit more time in the summer, and you might be able to get more money. So it depends on who's available for sure. You're right. If we sell Nketiah and we can't sign Tony, we're sitting going, hang on a minute, who's our striker now?
We've
only got Jesus. So it's more a matter of offer arrives and Arsenal only accept when they realise that we can sign the player to replace him.
What are you doing with Reece Nelson then? Because he's another one there's been offers.
Reece is a weird one. Because I'm keeping him because I love his profile and I think he's more important than people believe at times, and maybe Mikel believes as well.
But 87 Prem minutes though,
what does he want? If I'm Reece now, what do I want? Do I want to be an option for Arsenal or a starter for my career? Because he's 24 now,
getting on a bit.
He wants to be a starter. So Reece and Smith Rowe are in the same boat where I'm looking at them going, look, bros, like, what do you want from your careers? Do you want to sit on the bench and maybe get a few minutes here at Arsenal, get a few vibe photos and here and there, and get the Arsenal followers, or do you want to actually go out there, play some minutes, get some football, play like a footballer, right? You can't just be training every single day unless Arsenal's training is that good, where you just can't miss that, right? Go out and play some minutes. And I think with Reece, the fact that there's teams in the Premier League that actually want to sign him shows how good he could be. He could have gone to Brighton. He could have gone to teams, and there was Sevilla of interest as well.
West Ham's still on to him now.
I think with Reece,
be a good move, to be fair for him.
The issue is if we let go of Reece again, that's a lot of depth that he takes away straight away. So I'm keeping him personally because I'm selfish. But if I'm Reece Nelson and I get a very good offer, maybe he pushes for a transfer. I don't see that happening. I don't see him pushing for a transfer unless a crazy offer arrives, in which case you take it and you reinvest straight away.
I mean, it's always players. I think you're bang on the money. If no winger comes in, a bit like what I said with Eddie, for me, it doesn't make sense. Unless Mikel Arteta, which he's not going to do, sat here and said, don't worry, DG, we're going to sign a striker, we're going to sign a winger, whether it's a profile or not, then cool, you lot could leave. But we're cutting off our nose to spite our faces, if I'm honest. I agree with your point with Reece Nelson in that, you've come from the academy, you've had that moment against Bournemouth, you clearly are respected to a degree within the team and Mikel Arteta, but despite the fact of our wingers none of our attackers really thriving, you're not really getting a start. You've played 87 Premier League minutes. So it's like you are getting to that age now where you probably need to move on. I am a bit wary of the English players that we've spoken about because obviously we can't sell them all for depth reasons, and obviously we need to register them and whatnot. Where are you at with Aaron Ramsdale then? Because I personally don't see him leaving in January. I don't know. I'm sure in an ideal world, you could make a case of him going out on loan. I don't think Newcastle are going to offer anything close to what Arsenal want. The summer is where he's going to have to resolve his future. If you get an offer for Ramsdale, are you considering it?
It depends on how much the offer is. And at the same time, Ramsdale, I don't think goalkeepers don't get injured often. Touch wood, obviously, they don't get injured often. So the thing is, where we could easily, I think, sign a replacement then, like not a Ramsdale quality replacement, but it will be a backup goalkeeper, maybe a prospect offer. So if we get the thing with Jan is sometimes teams will be desperate, and if a team is desperate like that and they offer a crazy amount of money, they might put it forwards. But often what you get is loans, options to buys, obligations to buys. So it all depends on the offer, but I don't see Arsenal entertaining any offers in the first place because they're going to be hearing the worst just in case.
Last question for you then. Obviously, moving away from that, got Liverpool again, mate. Like Liverpool in the FA Cup. Where you at? What's your thoughts? Let me have any predictions, talking points, just everything in relation to Arsenal, Liverpool, bro.
Now they were without Mo Salah, who's going to the AFCON, right? Which for us is definitely a good thing. It's at the Emirates as well. So that's a very important thing as well.
We've obviously when was the last time? Now, man.
Yeah, when was the last time Liverpool won at the Emirates with fans there? I can't think of it. I can't. They beat us in COVID, yeah. When Jota scored a few goals.
Yeah.
Was it the Carabao Cup? You could say. But
I can't remember, and I hope beyond the end of Sunday they can't remember.
There's not as
either,
often as it is. There was one I'm thinking of now that was maybe a 2-1 where Ramsdale kind of flapped at it. Was it 21-22? That was it. But last year we beat them there, so we can definitely beat them at the Emirates Stadium.
2 games against them left.
And let's not forget, as great as their attack was against Newcastle, we held them down to what? One big chance all game, and
it's
that big chance
definitely a more
made,
competitive game playing Liverpool and City nowadays. And I still think we've got a long way to go, and I still think we have scope if we do stupid things to get battered against Liverpool and City. But I think generally we've been a lot more competitive, and that's the step of the right direction. So I think you're right. I do think it's another game that comes down to fine margins, because the Liverpool game we was all right, but we switched off. We let Trent play a difficult pass, which most players don't play. We gave Salah a bit too much time, which you can't, 20 other wingers, you could do that. The 21st is Salah, you can't afford to do that. I'm a bit disappointed that, of course, the hoodoo at Anfield continues. I do think it'd be a different game at the Emirates because of what you said. I do think, both teams are going to more so Liverpool with Salah than us with, well, to be fair, we'll miss Tommy Asu, who's gone off to the Asia Cup. I do think there'll be changes. I do think we'll be on the front foot a bit more. And I do think in a way that, obviously football is football and the sentiments stay the same way, but the Premier League is taking a bit of a downer. Sometimes it could be a good excuse to just focus on another tournament and things like that, or competition better yet. So I'm not going to lie. I never expect to beat Liverpool, but it's the FA Cup. That's our trophy. One of my pet peeves with Mikel Arteta has been, since we've won it, I won't say he's disrespected it, but I think we've all disrespected it. So I want to win, man. I'm going 2-1. I want carnage. Like I want blood. I think that's the best way to shut fans up in some way, giving them a big win. Yeah,
100%. And when you've lost 2 games in a row, Mikel can't take this. He has to take it seriously. He cannot take it for granted, because if you lose 3 in a row and you lose a game at home again, and you're out of the cup, and the cup is very important to a lot of fans, especially a lot of Arsenal fans that go to games. The FA Cup is massive for them, right? Old school fans love the FA Cup. So if you get locked out of that at home, there'll be a big problem. So I think, the fact that we ended 2023 on a bummer, Mikel wants to come out and make a statement, hopefully, and we get a win. So I'm not confident because we've lost 2 games in a row, but I'm believing, because that's what I always do.
I don't think anyone can disagree with that. Give me a prediction finally, then. I'm going to go 2-1 Arsenal. Nervy one.
2-1 Arsenal. I love a 3-1 Arsenal.
I'd love that.
But I could see beating a 3-2 like last year. It'll be an open game.
I don't want. I
maybe
want a boring game. My heart can't take this.
I don't know, but Liverpool's attack is in very good form. They're going to make chances, so they definitely score goals.
Yeah, so I don't think we're keeping a clean sheet. I'll be amazed. So, I'll be amazed.
So maybe 2 goals for them and 3 for Arsenal. It'd be amazing.
Do you think Ramsdale comes in?
That's a good question. And that's what Mikel will have to think about in terms of like, how much do you want to win this game? Because he sees Raya as the better goalkeeper.
Exactly.
So if you want to maximize your chance of winning the game, you start David Raya. And having lost 2 games in a row, he might do that. But then again, Ramsdale's not played since his Champions League game, so it won't. That's not my biggest concern. It'll be then the likes of Kivior, who might have to start because Zinchenko's injured. It looks like it, and Tommy has gone to the Asia Cup. So then, that's where we have to maybe look at and see, where does Nketiah start? Does Nelson start? Or does he go Saka and Martinelli? Because if he does that, again, there'll be fans will be saying, oh, why is he starting these players in the cup? Give him the rest. But But we've only got 3 games in January, and not many league games either. So we have time to rest players, relax, get a win, and get the season back on track.
That's what I mean about you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. Because if he starts them, and we lose, why didn't you? Exactly. Why didn't you rest them? If he rests these players and we don't,
haters will they will find a way to hate.
No, you can't win. You can't. As a manager, you can't win. Me personally, I can't look beyond the fact that it's Liverpool. I'm pretty sure these are the games that these players wanted to sign for. So I would personally sack a Martinelli regardless of form. You man are playing. Jesus, you're back up front. Odegaard, Havertz, Declan Rice, you lot are in midfield. As you said, left back's a bit of a peak one. I'm not gonna lie. If Zinchenko is, I'll back Kiri all the way and stuff. But not that I can really defend Zinchenko at the moment. But if he's fit, you play. For me, Benjamin White plays. The 2 boys in Saliba and Gabriel play. I am tempted to actually start Ramsdale, but kind of what you said at the start about too many changes. If Kiwior is in, if there's other changes, I think you kind of have to keep Raya. I think we need to kind of keep some of the stability we've had, regardless of the performances. So it's a bit of a mad one. If I forgot to ask you this going back quickly in relation to transfers. Yeah, we've been linked with a few names. Would you take Onana from Everton?
It's a good profile for sure, because he can play as a 6 and as an 8. But again, we're talking price tags. massive price tag on him for sure. Because Everton they're fighting relegation right now. They should be fighting mid-table at least, but they're fighting relegation right now. So to lose Onana would take a lot of money. So would I take the player? Yeah, but do I see happening? No.
Where are you at with Vlahovic and Boniface?
I think with Boniface, it's intriguing because he's I like the way he plays. He's very much aesthetically pleasing, you know. He's a Jesus type of player in that aspect, right? But this is his first year properly doing it at a top league. Last year he was in the Belgian league. I don't think he was doing crazy numbers. So with that small sample size, I'm not going to put down a crazy amount of money on a player who's just signed for Leverkusen, who are high and flying, fighting in the Bundesliga. So I think that's a no-go as well. And in terms of Vlahovic, it might be an option, you know, if Mikel becomes
50 million allegedly, even though I don't buy that.
If he becomes desperate for a striker, and Eddie does go as well. Eddie holds the keys. If Arsenal fans want to see a striker, you're looking at Eddie Nketiah first because he has to go first. I'm not saying push him out the club, but he will have to go first.
Literally has to leave to free up space, bring some money in and reinvest.
So that's why I'm looking at it, and I'm going, if you want to replace Vlahovic for Nketiah, I think that's an amazing move because Vlahovic's better than Nketiah. But if we sign Vlahovic, he has to be guaranteed to start because you don't want him to leave Juventus to sit on the Arsenal bench. And I don't think... Do fans want to see Vlahovic sign in January or wait for the summer to Osimhen?
When I did a live stream, some fans are not really with Vlahovic. Osimhen's the one, isn't it? I'm sure, you know, some fans will
There's
take
some fans
Vlahovic,
not even with Osimhen.
Pardon?
There's some fans not even with Osimhen. So there's different perspectives.
Everyone. All of them bring a risk. All of these players bring a risk.
And I think the only player... The player that I definitely see fans want the most right now because the player they've seen the most is Tony because they've seen him play in the Premier League. How many fans go watch a Serie A? Not as much. Versus Tony, you know, we've seen him against Arsenal, we've seen it in many games. So I think Mikel, if we sign a striker in January, he needs to be some sort of a guarantee. But Vladic's a player he really wanted. So if he really wanted him, there must have been a reason why. But then again, there was once upon a time when Mikel really wanted Houssem Aouar, but didn't get him and never went for him again.
And it didn't work out for Aouar. So yeah, it's not that Mikel Arteta's talent ID is faultless. Everybody makes mistakes, but 9 times out of 10, it's banged. What I will say is though, between January and the summer, or better yet, January and the start of next season, in an ideal world, I would obviously love to have more depth. I would love to have a number 2 because I don't see Ramsdale staying. I would need a winger. I'm not saying you need to get 2. I'd say a winger, centre mid, striker, more defensive depth, and just you know, and just about anything else Mikel Arteta wants. So it'd be interesting, man. And as I said, it's been 19 game weeks. You know, a week is a long time in football. A day is a long time. There's been many highs and lows. And for anyone that, you know, thought it was over, it's not because, you know, there's a lot of games left really and truly. But Babs, this has been amazing. Let people know where they can find you. I can't imagine they don't already. And any videos you've got to come out or content or any of that stuff, man. Yeah, Babs14 on the YouTube. And I've always said it, just stay away from the Twitter. Twitter's not bad nowadays, to be fair. Instagram, we got the little shorts out there. But yeah, on the YouTube, we're going hammer transfers because the window is open. So let's go for it. As you said, as the man himself said there, people, again, it's transfer season. 98% of these rumors are BS, but all of us Arsenal content creators will be there to assess it with you. So again, I can't imagine you haven't. Make sure you're subscribing to Babs, you're hitting the like button. Make sure you're letting us know your thoughts on everything we've discussed. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Football would be boring if we all saw it the same way. But yeah, people, we're out, Babs. Happy New Year once again. Appreciative for tuning in with me, my guy. Love. Let me let you get out of it. Safe. Love. Safe.
Against this right back, Charlie's definitely.
There's always that active red light defending. I think it's like